Right, Ian, and welcome to the last key lesson in this unit on the growth of Arab nationalism. This week we're thinking all about a man called Nasser. He was an Egyptian leader, and our big question will be, how did Nasser reignite hopes for Arab nationalism in the 1950s? So we're actually leaving the First World War and its aftermath, which is what we looked at last lesson with the Treaty of Versailles. And now we're going to jump forward to after the Second World War, when there was new hope for Arab freedom and independence, but also Arab nationalism. So the starter question is to have a think, why is the Arabian Peninsula and the Middle East important to the rest of the world? The picture in the cartoon is a bit of a clue, but as ever, write down as many thoughts as you've got into the starter question on the assignment, and then watch the rest of the video before you complete the assignment. Okay, so our learning objective today is to judge how significant Nasser was for the growth and success of Arab nationalism. So you should be able to describe who he was and some of his major achievements, including, for example, how he handled the Suez crisis and also how he worked with Syria. Most of you should be able to do that, but also explain why he was viewed as a hero of the Arab world. So not just saying what he did, but trying to show that you understand why that was important in this period of history in particular. Now, some of you will be able to do all of that, but also give quite a good informed judgment, I hope, about how successful he actually was as a leader of Arab nationalism. Remember, Arab nationalism, the idea that the Arab peoples would unite together to form a strong, solid Arab bloc that was as powerful as the old Islamic empires had been some 500 years before. How successful was he as a leader of Arab nationalism? So, keywords for today's lesson, as ever, Arab nationalism, we've just said already. Nasser, a really key part of today's lesson, was an Egyptian officer who became Egypt's ruler in 1952. Sir Anthony Eden will also be a key figure for today's lesson. He was the British Prime Minister in the middle of the 1950s, and in particular during the Suez crisis. So you'll have to find out what happened during that Suez crisis, but it will involve directly Britain and Egypt. It'll involve, in particular, control of the Suez Canal. And our last keyword for today is the United Arab Republic. And this was Nasser's attempt to create a kind of super state, a new pan-Arab nation that wasn't just Egypt or Syria, but actually joining these two countries together. So that should give you some idea already about some of his achievements. So what is the big idea for today's lesson? Here we go. Within a few years of the Second World War, many Arab countries had gained their independence. It's really important to understand that, because this makes it different from last week's lesson about the Treaty of Versailles, when, if you remember, they created these mandates and most of the Arab world and Middle East still remained under foreign European control or influence. However, we're jumping forward in time now. So after the Second World War, Jordan, Syria and Lebanon had all become independent states. Egypt already had its independence technically in the 1880s, still had a lot of British influence over it, but Saudi Arabia and Iraq had also gained their freedom in the interwar period. So in theory, what that means is that most Arab states were now free, but in reality, it wasn't quite like that. Western countries, but in particular Britain, still had a lot of influence. And as today we're going to talk about Egypt in particular, worth noting that Britain still had quite a strong influence over Egyptian politics. In 1956, however, a new leader called Gamal Nasser was able to free Egypt of all British influence. Now, that was a massive success for him as an Arab leader. You'll find out about that in detail. He then tried to unite the Arab peoples and re-establish the strength of the Arab world. How successful was he in reigniting Arab nationalism is the big question for today's lesson. You know what to do by now. Go on to the Microsoft assignment if you haven't done so already. Choose the appropriate level of lesson for you and complete the task to the best of your ability, all the time thinking about our big concept, Arab nationalism, and in particular for today, Nasser. Do you think he was successful in helping establish pan-Arab nationalism? Looking forward to reading your answers at the end.